if someone had walked into the small, dimly lit room on that cold morning in 1832, they would have found a young man sitting alone at a wooden table, his face buried in his hands. The window was cracked, the floor uneven, and the walls carried the smell of old timber soaked by years of rain. In front of him lay a single-letter rejection letter. But it wasn't just a letter. It was the final blow in a year filled with failure, humiliation, and heartbreak. The young man's name was Abraham Lincoln, and on that day he felt like giving up. His business had failed. His debts were crushing. His attempt to enter politics had been ridiculed, and the woman he loved more than anything in the world, Anne Rutledge, had died unexpectedly, leaving his heart shattered beyond repair. He had almost nothing left: no money, no connections, no success, no support. But before all of that, he would fail again and again and again. This is the real story of Abraham Lincoln, not the legend, not the polished image in textbooks, but the raw, painful human journey of a man who refused to give up. Today, we see Lincoln's face on our money, his statue towering over Washington, D.C., his legacy carved into the very soul of America. He's a symbol of strength, wisdom, and unshakable resolve. But the man behind the monument was forged in the fires of relentless failure. To truly understand his greatness, we have to go back to the beginning, to the dirt floor cabin in Kentucky where his story began. Born in 1809, Lincoln's early life was anything but presidential. His family was poor, constantly moving from one frontier settlement to another in search of a better life. He had less than a year of formal schooling, learning to read and write mostly by himself, devouring any book he could get his hands on. He worked splitting logs, farming, and clerking in a small store. But beneath that rustic exterior was a brilliant mind and an unyielding ambition. His first real taste of public life came in 1832 when he ran for the Illinois General Assembly. He was confident, passionate, and ready to make a difference. And he lost. Badly. He came in 8th out of 13 candidates. It was his first major political defeat, but it wouldn't be his last. Undeterred, he tried his hand at business, partnering with a friend to buy a general store in New Salem, Illinois. But the business quickly went under, and when his partner died, Lincoln was left with a mountain of debt that he would spend the next 17 years paying off. But not for Lincoln. It was a small victory, but it was a start. He began studying law in his spare time, teaching himself from borrowed books, and was eventually admitted to the bar. He was finally building a life for himself. He even fell deeply in love with a woman named Mary Owens. He proposed. She said no. Another rejection. Another heartbreak. It was around this time that he met Mary Todd, a spirited and ambitious woman from a prominent family. They had a turbulent courtship, even breaking off their engagement once. But they eventually married. Their life together was marked by both deep affection and profound tragedy. They had 4 sons, but only one, Robert, would live to adulthood. The loss of his children, especially his beloved son Willie, would cast a long shadow over Lincoln's life, adding to the immense weight he already carried. Throughout the 1840s and 50s, Lincoln's political career was a roller coaster of wins and losses. He was rejected. He went back to practicing law, his political ambitions seemingly at a dead end. This reignited Lincoln's political passion. He saw slavery as a moral and political cancer on the nation. He began speaking out with renewed vigor, his powerful arguments against the expansion of slavery, earning him national attention. But at the last minute, through a series of political maneuvers, the election slipped through his fingers. He lost. Again. 3 years later, in 1858, he ran for the Senate again, this time against the famous Stephen A. Douglas. Their series of debates became legendary, showcasing Lincoln's brilliant intellect and moral clarity. By this point, Lincoln's track record was a catalogue of failures: failed business, crushing debt, lost loves, lost elections for state legislature, for a government post, and twice for the U.S. Senate. He suffered from severe bouts of depression, what he called melancholy, so deep that friends sometimes hid knives and razors from him, fearing he might harm himself. So how did this man, so acquainted with defeat and despair, become the person who would lead America through its darkest hour? The answer lies in what he did after each failure. He didn't quit. He learned. He adapted. He grew stronger. Each loss sharpened his arguments. Each heartbreak deepened his empathy. Each setback solidified his resolve. His failures weren't the end of his story. They were the building blocks of his character. In 1860, the newly formed Republican Party was looking for a presidential candidate. The favorites were all prominent, powerful men. Lincoln was a dark horse, a long shot from the West with a history of losing. But his powerful speeches, his moderate stance, and his compelling life story resonated with people. To the shock of the political establishment, Abraham Lincoln won the Republican nomination, and a few months later, in a deeply divided country, he was elected the 16th President of the United States. His victory was the trigger for the Civil War. Before he even took office, 7 Southern states seceded from the Union. The 4 years that followed were the bloodiest in American history. Lincoln faced relentless criticism, political backstabbing, incompetent generals, and the crushing weight of sending hundreds of thousands of young men to their deaths. Yet, through it all, the man who had been broken so many times refused to break. He held the Union together through sheer force of will. He delivered the Gettysburg Address, a 2-minute speech that redefined the meaning of America. Think about it. The man who failed in business was the one who managed the massive economy of a nation at war.